Hey everyone, welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show. I am Denny Carter, not Patrick Doherty. Pat is still in French-speaking Canada for some reason, even though he is a hardy Midwestern American male. We're not sure what's going on there. I'm joined today by my favorite Zoomer on the planet Earth, Kyle Dvorchak.
Only one you've ever met, to be clear, but
I know like two others, okay? And you're much more erudite, okay? So I appreciate that. So we're gonna fill you in on everything happening in the aftermath of the Cowboys-Chargers Monday night game. We are going to talk about Uncle Lenny, Leonard Fournette, maybe coming back to the league in the second half of the season. Something Kyle's best ball teams are very much.
Dude, don't get me started. Don't you dare get me started.
We're going to talk about the Rams backfield apocalypse, the Niners backfield apocalypse, all manner of backfield apocalypse. We're going to talk about Trevor Lawrence maybe not playing on Thursday Night Football, which is a real bummer for everyone involved on both sides of that game, among other things. We're also going to touch on the Cowboys pass catchers. Kyle has some data on Michael Gallup, Brandon Cooks, CeeDee Lamb, and others in that offense. But we are going to start with Lombardi Lenny, Leonard Fournette, who, hey, look, he's still out there. He's still dropping.
We've got news, buddy. I'm sorry to interrupt you. We've got news. The Eagles signed Julio Jones. That is so cool.
What?
I don't know if that means anything because their top two receivers are so good that and their tight end is so good that generally I would normally in any other circumstance when it's Quez Watkins, Olamide Zaccheaus, or that track sprinter guy they have, if that guy ever gets time. Watkins. No. They have, it's like Devon something. He was an Oregon player who's a track sprinter, and he is a practice squad / 53-man guy. All those guys, I'm like, who cares? Maybe on a showdown slate, I'm like, oh, maybe I can play this guy at $400 and 0.06% ownership. But normally, their top two guys see so much work that who cares? But this is legit from the actual Eagles account. We've signed Julio Jones. Full business.
Man,
that's pretty cool. I don't even really think you should add him. How is he going to take targets away from AJ Brown, who is taking a ton of targets away from Devonta Smith, who has made Dallas Goedert's life hell in that he appears twice every 6 weeks for a good fantasy game? He's not. The answer is he's not. But I think it's cool.
Yeah, well, hey, look at having AJ Brown and Julio Jones on the same field, same team is pretty cool, I think.
Wait, no. This happened already, right? That happened in Tennessee, did it not?
It did happen. It didn't work out, Kyle, actually.
Good luck, Jalen. We've seen it once.
Yeah, I was actually checking on the pass rate over expected for the Eagles. They ranked 10th, right behind the Dolphins. So, probably not enough volume to go around. But if you're in a 16-team league, man, you are fired up about adding Julio Jones, who, honestly, I didn't know. I didn't even know he was interested in coming back. I had not heard anything.
Yeah, I legit thought he was done, and that's fine. He's great. So, I mean, he's obviously he didn't win a ring with Tampa Bay. He joined a year after they won a ring, correct? Yeah. And obviously, he also was on the, was it 28-3 comeback loss to, it's 28 something or 28.
28-3. Yeah. He was on the Falcons team that lost.
Obviously, he was on the Falcons team that lost that. He was a year late to the Tampa Bay. Incredible run with Tom Brady. So he's, I don't want to say chasing a ring. He's joining a team that has a good shot at earning a ring, let's say.
We respect a ring chaser around here, okay? I would be doing it if I were Julio Jones at that age. By the way, you may hear that I am congested and not feeling well. It's true. We're trying to use artificial intelligence to make me sound less sick. So far, Kyle, it's not working. We're going to have to try that more strongly going forward. But from one veteran who apparently just signed with the Eagles to
one veteran former Tampa Bay player. I'm sorry to keep interrupting you, but I can't stop making the connections.
Oh, there's so many connections. I see your little board in the back with all the red lines connecting Fournette to Julio to Hurts to everybody. It's Tom Brady. Tom Brady's coming back. No, I'm kidding. So Fournette was apparently, on his way to visit the Bills after Damian Harris suffered that scary neck injury on Monday night. Harris probably will miss a lot of time, if not the rest of the season. That made sense. And then it was reported Tuesday morning that that's not happening, that visit is not happening. And other teams, I quote, other teams are, quote, interested in Leonard Fournette. I guess, look, hey, there are a lot of backfield injuries. So it is possible. Kyle, you write our waiver wire piece. How are you handling this Uncle Lenny news?
I haven't thought about adding him in a single league. And this is coming from someone who, as you think it's a joke that you pointed out as someone who drafted a lot of best ball teams. This may apply to me. You think it's a joke. I literally think he was my third or fourth most drafted running back across somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 to 180, something like that, teams.
Yeah.
And a few grand, maybe like 8 to 10 grand of best ball teams. You think it's funny that, oh, this best ball bro is excited to get Lenny back. I need Leonard Fournette back. And the thing is, as much as I think I need Leonard Fournette back, he's not going to, especially if he signs with the Bills, but for most teams, I think there are a very few teams that we don't know who he is supposedly visiting with yet, other than the Bills, which that is may or may not happening.
Yeah.
There may be some teams that he could step into a 1 or 2 week role in which he earns that starting role and puts up like an RB2 performance. But the Bills, the one that we know he has interest in and the team has interest in him, he would be joining as like a clear backup. They are probably losing Damian Harris, who only suffered a neck injury and concussion, thank God, but is probably out for some time. He's like a Latavius Murray clone. He would be filling a similar role to Latavius Murray. So what value does he have there in terms of fantasy? Extremely little. I mean, maybe he could sign, I don't know, with a team like the Panthers, for instance. And if they're not satisfied with what we've seen from Chuba Hubbard, he could earn the start. But again, I don't think Miles Sanders' injury is long-term. He'd be maybe a 1 week starter. And that would be the perfect needle thread of Sanders needing to be out like 3 weeks. And then Leonard Fournette gets the start in week 8 or whatever. I'm not concerned with him in terms of just my standard season-long league.
Yeah, no, I'm not, as a zero RB guy, even I'm not too interested in Fournette. So just monitor that situation.
Yeah, if anyone would be interested in like very unappealing running back plays off the waiver wire, it would be Denny and I. It would be us. So if we're not interested, you do not need to worry about it, listeners.
Speaking of running back plays off the waiver wire, Kyle Shanahan said on Monday night that Christian McCaffrey, who suffered an oblique injury, it could have possibly also been the ribs, according to Shanahan. They're checking that out, I guess. That CMC does have a chance to play in week 7. So just keep that in mind. But also, he mentioned that Jordan Davis, who led the Niners backfield last week when McCaffrey left, Jordan Davis had five carries for 27 yards and a touchdown. That's back-to-back weeks with a touchdown for him. I keep saying Jordan Davis. I meant Jordan Mason.
Jordan Davis, Eagles defensive tackle. Really good.
Jordan Mason, not Davis. So Jordan Mason was the RB1 last week pretty clearly. But Shanahan mentioned in a press conference that Elijah Mitchell only got in 1 full practice last week because of various ailments. So that would change, presumably, if Mitchell practices more this coming week. And I think Kyle, it's shaping up to be kind of an ugly shared backfield here for San Francisco if McCaffrey is out. I don't think that you can pick up Mason, honestly, as much as I like Mason. I have Mason on some best ball teams. I have him on some redrafts. I really do like him as a player. He seems to fit that offense really well, that whole one cut thing that they do in the Shanahan system. But I don't think that Mason is going to be in line for like 15 or 18 carries. Do you see it any differently here?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to tell because we saw Eli Mitchell come back from, I think it was 2-game absence because of a knee issue last week. 2 carries, got out-snapped, out-routed, out-carried by Jordan Mason. But it was, reading the tea leaves, right? There was a quote from Kyle Shanahan, I think from a Sunday night presser, maybe it was a Monday afternoon presser, it doesn't matter too much, saying, he kind of, lavished Eli Mitchell with, he knows the system. We trust him. He's been really good as a starter. And that's not wrong. He's right in that Eli Mitchell has been really strong as a starter. It just comes down to his health. And even if he is fully healthy, they have no, full practice 3 times in a row heading into week 7. He's been a guy who, as much as we say so-and-so, like injury prone is mostly not a thing, which I think is generally true. I don't think it's always true, but I do think we ascribe injury prone to players who have bad luck that is not actually, predictive in a sense. Right. Teams, I would guess, also don't quite understand the difference between the predictiveness of injury prone versus the randomness of seemingly injury prone. I do think there is a very, very low to zero probability that we get like a 20 carry game from Elijah Mitchell. He got 2 carries last week, comes out carried by Jordan Mason. Even if he does, and I think he probably will get the start this week, I'm guessing we get a full-blown committee. But if we get a committee on one of the best offenses with one of the best rushing schemes in football, maybe that means 9 to 10 carries and a target or 2 for Jordan Mason. He has some deep life. And I will say you start him and you're just praying for RB3 numbers. Falls in the end zone. Running backs in San Francisco tend to do that a lot. And you're hoping they rush two touchdowns and he gets the second one, something like that. There's a non-zero chance that Eli Mitchell still isn't quite ready for more than 5 to 10 carries this week. And you have that sort of out as he gets 5 to 10 carries and Jordan Mason goes out and is essentially forced to be the starter. Because I think perfectly healthy and no health concerns going forward, Kyle Shanahan 100% gives Eli Mitchell 15 to 20 carries or 15 to 20 touches, let's say, the clear start. Yeah. But we're not at that point yet. So I think there is some very low floor, but high-ish ceiling potential with Jordan Mason. But you have to know that going in, that you could very much be on the receiving end of 6 carries, 25 yards, no catches, nothing. That's it. You could also get like 1480 and a touchdown, maybe.
And yeah, should we mention that, whoever leads the backfield here could see some volume. The Niners are 29th in pass rate over expected, right in line with like the Bears and the Cardinals. So it's it is definitely, as always.
Do they play this week? I assume they're going to be favorites.
They play the Vikings. It's a get right spot, folks. They play the Vikings. So it's it could be good for whoever. Anyway, you got Mason and Mitchell should be rostered on waivers this week.
Yes,
I wouldn't go crazy. I mean, McCaffrey could just suit up and
play. He
could
also play. That is the scary part. Where in my waiver wire column originally I had Mason, and then I was a little more tepid. Maybe it's Mitchell, but I had both of them as really strong. You should be doing a lot to get this guy. And now that CMC's in the mix, we know for sure Dave Montgomery is not playing. I find it a little dubious that Jahmyr Gibbs plays, but we'll see. And then in LA, we know for sure that Kyren Williams isn't playing and Ronnie Rivers isn't playing. I'd say Craig Reynolds is more likely to start than not this week. And then Zach Evans is extremely likely to start this week. There is a very real chance Christian McCaffrey plays this week. Yeah. If you end up blowing like 25% of your fab on either one, or even 15% of your fab on either one of the San Francisco backs, you're worried about a committee. You're thinking, oh, do I get more touches? Do I get more snaps? And then Christian McCaffrey just comes in and blows it up. that sort of risk knocked both of the backs down to like third in the situation priority versus LA versus the Lions backfield as well.
We're going to come back to that LA Rams backfield in a moment. But first, folks, I need to tell you that basketball season is almost here. And that means one thing. It's draft season. Get the Rotoworld basketball draft guide, which includes all the rankings, player outlooks, and projections you need to win your league this season. Go to NBCsports.com and get your draft guide now and use code HOOPS23 to save 20% off and receive a $10 Fanatics e-gift card. Kyle, are you playing season-long fantasy basketball?
No, but I will be playing. I know I have some tickets for the first DFS contest, so I still need to be reading up on my action.
Yeah, I need to. I want to. I haven't played in a long time. I used to be very passionate about season long basketball. I was a big like basketball head. I would stay up till like 3 a.m. to watch the Clippers or whatever. It
is tough. Both living on the East Coast, and they have 10 o'clock tip offs for like LA, like double LA games.
Oh, man, that was rough. But I did it because, hey, you know what? I was in my early 20s and I didn't have to get up before noon, so it didn't matter. All right, let's go back real quick to that Rams backfield. So we have Kyren Williams out. We have Ronnie Rivers out. And this, by the way, this stinks for folks who rostered Ronnie Rivers for a while. And they were like,
who's rostering Ronnie Rivers?
No, somebody, people did. No, I didn't. I'm not that sick. But somebody like really like was very proud of themselves. Like, okay, Ronnie Rivers is a clear RB1 for a pretty good Rams
25
offense.
roster spot dynasty league. They're like, I'm going to get a start out of this guy.
And if Kyron goes down, I'm in business, at least for a week, maybe 2, right? And then this happens. This is terrible. So rookie Zach Evans, first at TCU. He played his last season in college at Ole Miss. Actually, it's a smaller guy in stature, but very
like 205,
explosive.
Low, or high 5 foot, like 5'10", I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
He was a backup to, I have no clue who he's back to his first year at TCU. It was a complete committee that Amari DiMercato actually was a part of that committee. Then the next year it was DiMercato, Kendre Miller as the starter, and then also Evans as the backup. Then he transfers to Ole Miss, and he was a 5-star recruit. He was actually, I believe, if I remember correctly, the first 5-star recruit in TCU history. He's still the highest recruit in TCU history. So he transfers, in a sense, to get his final shot at starting. He was highly recruited and just found his way into NFL caliber backfields in back-to-back seasons, goes to Ole Miss, and then they have Quinshon Judkins. I'm probably mispronouncing it to some degree. Quinshon Judkins, who is truly elite, like probably going to be a very highly draft pick, and I think he might have one more year of eligibility, but finds himself behind another NFL caliber running back. He was a high recruit who then tested well at the combine or maybe his pro day. It was like a 8.7 RAS or something like that. Smaller dude, but like over 200 is at least a metric we care about, or a number we care about. I think for a small amount of time, I don't know about for 17 weeks, but for a small amount of time, he could handle the bulk of the backfield. It entirely depends on the team's trust in him. They have Royce Freeman on the practice squad. He will ultimately be called up, and they'll probably bring someone else in too. But for a week, for 2 weeks, do I think he could get a lot of the touches? That seems somewhat likely, especially given that Kyren Williams is fine, but it's not like he was some second round pick, highly touted type of player.
Right.
He missed all of his rookie season and was more of a like 2.5 down player, like satellite back mixing in for touches at Notre Dame, I believe, was not at all this highly touted player coming in the NFL. Misses all of his rookie season. Most of his rookie season was like all but 2 or 3 games. And then his second year, he is a 3-down back from the jump. We've seen this story before. Zach Evans could be the next element of that story, especially given that they don't have to give him 20 touches a game for 17 weeks. They have to do it for 2 to maybe 3, maybe even only 1.
Yeah. Wanted to mention quickly that the Rams running backs have not been super involved in the passing offense. Rams are 29th in target share to running backs this season. So if Zach Evans is going to get there, it's going to probably have to be on the ground, which, it could. He's an explosive guy, averaged 6.85 yards per touch in his final season in college. So definitely, if you're, kind of scraping bottom at running back like me in some leagues, you are all in. You're very excited about Zach Evans.
Yep.
You're getting him. All right, let's shift over to the Thursday night game, Kyle, between the Jaguars and the Saints. Now, the entire fantasy environment of this game hinges on Trevor Lawrence playing. And even if he does play, he's probably so banged up. It's not going to be great. Trevor Lawrence was seen with a knee brace at practice on Tuesday. We're going to know his status probably by tomorrow night-ish, but it could be a game time call. I could see it being a game time call for Thursday night. If he doesn't start, apparently CJ Beathard is going to start. And not like I thought, Kyle. I thought Nathan O'Rourke was on the roster. Where did that guy go? Oh,
that's right. He had such a sick preseason.
Yeah.
He had like a Mahomesian, eludes pressure, throws a sick, like Andrew Luck kind of made these throws too, throws a sick getting tackled and a dart 20 yards downfield in the preseason. And then the next week he comes out and makes great plays again. You're telling me he's not on the roster though?
I love that guy. Listen, I watched Nathan O'Rourke in the CFL for a couple years. I'm not even playing with you. Yeah. And that guy has dog. Okay. Massive dog levels.
Does he?
And I'm shocked he wasn't the backup. So CJ Beathard would start. So I guess my question is, how does this affect the pass catchers here? It's a very, in the preseason, we had on a Jaguars beat writer who said, hey, this will probably be evenly distributed target share to all the main pass catchers. And I don't know. I was a little skeptical because Calvin Ridley was really good in 2020. but that it has worked out that way for the most part. Ridley ran cold last week, of course. Should have had a much bigger day, but we could have said that about his last like 4 games. So, oh well. Anyway, what does this do for you if Beathard is out? How do you handle these Jags pass catchers?
Yeah, this is quite bad. I mean, I think to some degree you still have to play them because they're all seeing just barely enough work that if the offense really struggles, they're still in line for like 25% target shares. And by them, I mean specifically Ridley, Kirk, and Evan Ingram, who is coming like shockingly close to the other two in terms of his target share. So, and he plays tight end. So even if he is third on the team in target share, his is somewhere closer to that 18 to 22%. That's perfect for a tight end. That's better than most tight ends. So I still think you have to play them all, but just be ready for disappointment because it almost reminds me of a 49ers situation, but only based on like volume, not efficiency, where the 49ers, we always say like, they just don't quite get the ball to their players enough for all of them to hit, for Debo, Ayuk, Kittle to hit in a given game. But they're so good that 2 of them, 1 of them, maybe 3 of them, probably not 3 of them, are going to have really strong games. I think the Jags are the opposite in that they will probably have enough volume to get Kirk and Ingram, Ridley and Kirk, Ingram and Kirk, ball 6-7 times, and in a PPR league, that's 6 for 80 in a touchdown, maybe hopefully a touchdown, hopefully something like that. But be prepared for 1 of them, if not 2 of them, to have very disappointing games.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I guess it could be a game where they just lean on Travis Etienne here and just give him a bunch of carries to kind of protect themselves against Beathard. I mean, Beathard is a reasonably okay backup, so I don't think it's a complete debacle. But also the Saints,
he's all right. Didn't he have like a year or maybe 2 as like 2 starts in the Shanahan system where you see like Nick Mullins all of a sudden is like the league leader in yards per attempt on like 35 attempts, and somehow CJ Beathard gets one of those games as well, if I remember correctly.
That's right. Yeah, CJ Beathard is one of those guys that Brock Purdy skeptics point to and say, hey, well, you remember this guy? Come on, you remember Mullins? No, but on the other side of the ball, I do think that it would affect the Saints in that the Saints would not be pushed to really throw the ball much. They would probably be fine doing that thing where they give Alvin Kamara 25 carries up the middle for very, very few yards. I did want to mention that producer Adam says that the line on the Thursday night game has moved from Saints -3 to Saints -1 today. So that could point to Trevor Lawrence, being on the right side of questionable with the knee injury.
Did you see the play he got hurt on?
I didn't. What happened?
It was hilarious. I saw it. So it was like one of those plays where just unblocked pass rusher, actually, like I think 2 of them come in and PFF records it as a pressure within 0.5 seconds, something hilarious. And he turns around and he's just sprinting for his life. But the pass rusher gets, a very easy head start on him and takes him down for, I think was literally recorded as like a 17-yard sack, like a comically deep sack. The game was kind of functionally over, so it didn't matter that much. But yeah, then he came up limping really bad, and he did not take the final kneels of the game. They sent CJ Beathard out. They weren't even going to put Lawrence out for the kneels. So it does, I guess, seem like he might play, and he's played through some like light, I don't want to say light, but he's played through some play-throughable injuries before. Yeah. So, and the fact that I believe they're on the road for this game and would only be 1-point dogs, as you pointed out, Vegas is leaning at least towards him playing.
It would be good. So are you starting him? Because I guess if he starts, I guess you probably don't have a better option on the waiver wire. I mean,
waiver wire sucks this week. I was writing the waiver wire column for quarterbacks and no good. It's like Desmond Ridder, Sam Howell. I'm not starting those guys over him. If it was a week where
you're starting Derek Carr.
No, and I even put him as an ad on the waiver wire. He was like my 3rd or maybe my 2nd ad, honestly. And I still wouldn't start Carr. No.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good to know. All right. Well, we will keep it locked in on Rotoworld for injury updates to Trevor Lawrence as we get closer to Thursday night. Folks, I really quick need to tell you about a huge game we have coming up on NBC, Sunday Night Football, between two of our analytics kings, the Dolphins and the Eagles. The Sundays nights, two of the most explosive offenses in Philadelphia, meet in Philadelphia when the high-flying Dolphins take on the Eagles. Get ready for what could be a shootout at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on NBC and Peacock. I will be ready, as always, for Sunday night, Kyle, as I always am. And that game should be fun for DFS purposes.
The primetime games have been like hit or miss with a lot of misses this year. And they always are. Like the Thursday nights are terrible. And then we think we get a good game and the Chiefs do that thing where like Mahomes throws 2 tipped turnovers. This seems like a legit, like, I mean, this could be a Super Bowl matchup. The Dolphins are, every metric will tell you they're the best offense in football, and the Eagles are coming off of literally being in the Super Bowl. So that's actually, don't want to jinx it. I apologize to listeners if I jinx it. I would say this looks like the best primetime matchup we've gotten this year.
Let's just say you're starting your guys in this one, folks. So looking forward to that. We're going to get to the Dallas pass catchers. So last night, Brandon Cooks finally did something for fantasy purposes. He caught a touchdown. Sorry if you can hear that in the background. I'm not sure what that is. And Kyle, tell us a little bit about the breakdown with Dallas pass catchers over the past few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, Michael, like last night, obviously, we saw Brandon Cooks get in the end zone. If you're playing DFS, he was kind of a guy you needed. But in terms of the actual usage, Michael Gallup, who's been trending in the right direction for the past 3 weeks, I don't want to say he was their wide receiver 1, but the numbers would tell you he's their wide receiver 1. More so what that tells me, it was a good matchup for him, and he's clearly their wide receiver 2, because like since in the first 3 weeks, Gallup, he really, since suffering the knee injury in 2021 now, hasn't shown a ton. First 3 weeks, we kind of looked like the same old Michael Gallup or the same new Michael Gallup, unfortunately, where he had like 12% targets per route run, 11% target share, 21% air yard share. That's true wide receiver 3 numbers, not usable for fantasy. In the past 3 weeks, they have made it a much bigger emphasis as a part of the offense to get him involved. 0.26 targets per route run, 23% target share, 27% air yard share. Those are legit wide receiver 2 numbers. And a lot of that is buoyed by the Monday Night Football game, in which I believe he led the team in targets, led the team in air yards, and he had a dropped would have been touchdown. He might have had a few other, only 40% of his targets were deemed catchable, but they were trying to or able to get him involved in terms of the opportunities in a number of different ways, both deep, short, end zone, not, and it just didn't connect. And it connected for Brandon Cooks. But the fact that they were much more interested and much more able to, because I don't want to say interested as if Michael Gallup doesn't have any control over it. He gets open. That's part of getting him the ball, is you have to get open and earn the targets. He was earning targets. He was earning air yards. So despite the Brandon Cooks touchdown, I'm still going to call Michael Gallup the team's number 2 receiver. I think in more high scoring environments, although last night wasn't really high scoring, it was back and forth, let's say, right. In those type of back and forth environments, which Dallas has somehow not found themselves in like almost any week up until last night. I actually think Michael Gallup's like a fine wide receiver 3 adjacent play. In a game where we project them to blow out their opponents, which they've done and been on the receiving end of a few times, it's going to be tough to get him going. But I do think Michael Gallup still, to me, probably has the edge for the wide receiver 2 numbers, even though we saw the touchdown from Brandon Cooks last week. We don't want to be box score chasing. Last night, right? It's Tuesday. Last night, yes. 33% of the targets, 43% of the air yards, a third of the end zone targets. I mean, that would be wide receiver 1 numbers. We don't expect that to hold up. We expect him, I at least expect him to be the wide receiver 2.
I'm with you, and I do think that Cook's touchdown will throw folks off a little bit about who's behind CeeDee Lamb in that wide receiver 2 role. But the numbers point to Gallup being that guy, as you pointed out. Overall, though, this Cowboys passing offense leaves quite a bit to be desired. Dallas has the 4th lowest average depth of target at under 7. Dak Prescott is 22nd in downfield passing rate. He has fewer deep ball completions this season, Kyle, than Josh Dobbs. So, I mean, I
don't know who you're going to say, but I wasn't ready for that.
Yeah, that's just rough. It's just rough. I guess it's just this thing, this West Coast offense that they're going to run. where it's just a bunch of like 4 or 5, 6 yard completions to their playmakers in space or not in space. I don't know. It's very boring. It's very predictable.
Yeah, they're 19th in
not...
pass rate over expected, but like
yeah.
I think we'll talk about this in a minute. Every time they give Tony Pollard the ball, it is somehow 2nd and 10. He's averaging 15 carries a game, and they're all on 2nd and 10. So
yes, it is amazing, isn't it?
It's brutal, brutally amazing, amazingly brutal.
Are we worried, by the way, with Pollard? So he gets tracked down on that 60-yard reception. What's going on there? Is it this guy lost the juice? What's going on?
He might have lost the juice. I like. I think you obviously take listeners behind the curtain. You text me, you send me a Slack about what we're going to talk about, and the exact wording of Tony Pollard topic for this show is Tony Pollard. Is it Jover? I don't want to say it's Jover because we talk about players who we're just not seeing the efficiency from, but we're still getting the volume from.
Right.
And those guys often make their way into an article, say like your regression files, because to some, like one, we talk about running backs not mattering. It's that a lot of a running back's outcomes are not dependent on the things they can control. It's dependent on blocking, situation, etc. But on the other hand, it's also dependent for fantasy purposes on, did you get the ball at the 1 yard line? If you get the ball at the 1 yard line, you're very likely to get 6 fantasy points, 6.1 fantasy points on that carry. Guess who gets the ball at the 1, at the 5, at the 10, et cetera, everywhere near the goal line. He has more red zone carries than every other running back in the NFL, except for Christian McCaffrey. And I believe they're tied exactly. So no other running back has more carries in the red zone. He's still on pace for an incredible season in terms of his usage. We're just not seeing with the volume. And am I willing to concede that maybe he's not the efficient Tony Pollard we used to know? Yes. One, he is getting more carries. I think if the simple raw carry volume was actually what was hampering him, you would see drastic splits in his like first 5 carries of the game versus his next 10 carries. And you don't really see that. Not that I've seen, at least. So I think it's possible that one, he's like running backs age and get less efficient, but 2, it's also possible that he broke like his ankle and had a high ankle sprain in January.
I raised this as an issue, and I was shot down. I was told no, cut his mic. They censored me. I said, hey, this guy's coming off a very serious injury. They said, no.
Corporate NBC said, don't talk.
Buddy. Right. They said, look, I was told, look, it doesn't matter. An injury doesn't matter if the guy's leg snaps in half. It only matters if it's
what was the injury? It was like high ankle sprain. And was it broken ankle or like broken tibia or whatever, like the lower?
It was like a completely fractured ankle.
I couldn't remember exactly, but thank you.
And but those don't matter. I think it matters a little. I will say, whatever's happening, it is quite depressing from a fantasy standpoint because, like Josh Jacobs in Vegas, Pollard is getting all of the high value touches that you could ever want. Like he should be by far and away the RB1 overall in fantasy. Okay, based on how he's being utilized in that Dallas offense, and he's still an RB1. I actually don't have it in front of me, but. You're playing him. It's okay, but man, it's been disappointing. Hopefully, that works itself out over time.
So here's the question: is he like an obvious buy low? Because clearly the talent in previous years has been there, and then this year the role is there. Like you said, his usage in terms of just like fantasy points, expected fantasy points, it's him and McCaffrey, and there's a chasm. Like it is those two guys who are being used like no other running backs, and then a gap. So is he an obvious buy low? Maybe I'm a dumb spreadsheet loser. Yes. I think the answer is still yes.
Yes. I mean, it depends on who you'd have to part with, like I'm trying to think of like, would you trade away, like, you wouldn't trade away someone like Jamar Chase or anything for Pollard, right?
I think the AJ Brown, Stephon Diggs tier is a conversation in half PPR.
All right. Well, you know what, that actually, I wouldn't hate. The AJ Brown's running so hot right now that maybe,
right.
So you're selling high on AJ Brown, you're buying low on Pollard, but I think just overall this Dallas offense is just not inspiring. I try to be inspired by it, and I cannot. I meant to mention this earlier, but as long as we're talking about guys from last night's game, Monday night game, Quentin Johnston, talking about guys for whom it is Jover. Quentin Johnston coming out of the bye week, no Mike Williams, the Chargers in desperate need for someone to step up in that passing offense and take on a more prominent role. Quentin Johnston gets goose-egged against the Cowboys. 2 targets, didn't catch either of them. He was the one who was being targeted on the last throw that was intercepted from Justin Herbert. So, man, just as bleak as it gets. Obviously, it's Josh Palmer, it's Keenan Allen, it's Austin Eckler, and it's nobody else here. Well, I should say maybe Gerald Everett a little bit, and maybe
he's like splitting reps with Donald Parham.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Is if one of the tight ends was getting all of the tight end volume,
it'd be so good.
Sure, but part of the reason we're seeing 2 tight ends get volume is because they're opting to play 12 personnel as opposed to getting Quentin Johnston on the field, which is hilarious. Like, I love Donald Parham. Trust me, like you can search my Twitter handle and then the word Donald Parham, you will find a lot of tweets about him. But the fact that they're using a combination of Donald Parham and Gerald Everett, in essence, to keep Quentin Johnston off the field is a massive indictment of Quentin Johnston. He ran less than half the routes, fewer than half the routes last night. So yeah, it's as Joe-verse as it's ever been.
So I took Johnston in the deep leagues that I was in just because I thought he was like kind of an easy.
Oh yeah, I drafted a bunch of him.
Yeah, an easy, cheap way to access a potentially good passing offense. Like, and honestly, when I drafted him, I had the thought if Mike Williams misses time, I'm in. Like this works. Okay. And that's not going to work out, Kyle. I'm very sad about it.
I'm too. I drafted a bunch of them for the same reason. Like, I think the Chargers, a new offensive coordinator with healthy receivers, they're going to put up a ton of points. And that part has been generally true. They have been a very strong offense this year. They don't seem to know that they spent a first-round pick on Quentin Johnston. They spent that pick instead of taking Zay Flowers, instead of taking Jordan Addison. I hate when that happens.
Well, this is apparently something that teams should not do is draft TCU receivers. Last one was
Jalen Reagor went over Justin Jefferson,
So we may be learning a lesson here. I don't know. We have to look.
Wasn't Josh Doxson a TCU receiver?
Yes, I think he was.
I think he was.
Yeah. Wow. Now that's tough. Yeah. So maybe take notes if you're listening in an NFL front office. All right. Enough of last night's game. Let's get on real quick to Tennessee, where Ryan Tannehill was carted off in London against the Ravens with an ankle injury. He is not going to require surgery on that ankle like he did last year. So we're probably talking about a multi-week absence, but not the rest of the season. We're not talking about this so much because you're dying to play Ryan Tannehill, but we're talking about it because if you're in a super flex league, a deeper league, Malik Willis looks interesting on the waiver wire as a guy who brings, some rushing upside. He's the one who came in for Tannehill, not Will Levis, because Will Levis is down tremendously right now. Will Levis, I think, would be the backup. Although there is some talk, I don't know, Kyle, if you've seen this, there is some talk on the internet about will Levis challenge for the starting job. The answer is no. Okay, just so everyone knows, the answer is no.
I don't know, man. Malik Willis,
really
bad. He
was okay. 4 or 5 for 70 yards.
So actually, I watched this game. This is the London game. I watched this one. 48, if I remember on the dot, 48 of those yards were something like a negative A. Tajay Spears catch and run.
Right.
He played a drive and a half and took 4 sacks, something like that, 3 sacks, one of them called back by a penalty. And that's the thing that's always been his issue since entering the NFL in the preseason and his regular season appearances, is that he has no ability to diagnose pressure. And then when he does see pressure, like I have seen him look a defender in the eyes, they're running at him and he just cannot throw the ball away. It is a sight to behold, but it is drastic for the team. Yeah. And I think even when we saw them start Malik Willis versus the Chiefs on like a Thursday night football game last year,
it was horrific.
It was 30 Derrick Henry carries because they were terrified of letting him drop back to pass.
So is this a bailout for Derrick Henry drafters?
It is. As someone who drafted no Derrick Henry, I think it is. But also part of the problem is Derrick Henry has not been the same hyper efficient, can break off a 60-yard run the most yards after contact, the most rush yards over expected, all of our dumb nerd metrics. He has not been that guy this year. He's been all right, but he's not a guy where on any given carry, you expect him to house call it. You expect him to throw the nastiest stiff arm. He hasn't been that efficient. And the problem with this offense, I assume, being terrible under Malik Willis, because he's been dreadfully inefficient since entering the league on his very few, admittedly, opportunities, is that when are they going to get him near the end zone? Like, they're not throwing to him, obviously. That role has been entirely consumed by Tajay Spears. So, yes, do I think he goes out and gets 20 carries, assuming Malik Willis is the starter? Even if Will Levis is the starter, he's also still going to get 25 carries, frankly. Yes. Do I think it looks more like 25 for 101 and you're banking on a touchdown because he caught one pass? That's probably what you need.
And then this is a disaster for DeAndre Hopkins. Am I right?
Oh, dreadful. Absolutely dreadful.
Yeah. I mean, I actually think Hopkins becomes like a borderline, like not playable kind of.
Only reason he's playable is because I think there are 6 teams on bye this week. Last week, there were only 2 teams on bye. On that type of week, you're like, do I start him or Josh Downs? Yeah. Let's go Josh Downs this week. But this week there are a bunch of teams on bye.
Well, I should mention that Titans have a bye this week. So
okay, well, if they're on a week, I don't know who's on bye in 2 weeks, but if they're on a bye, or if there are like only 2 teams on bye in 2 weeks, it's a Josh Downs, Michael Wilson, Jaden Reed, all of these just dreadful names. Yeah. Jackson Smith-Njigba had a 6.8 ADOT. Can I start him over Hopkins?
Curtis Samuel.
It's bad. Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's a great example. Perfect. Yeah. Rashid Shaheed.
Oh no, and I'm starting most of those guys honestly over Hopkins with Willis under center. So we'll keep tabs on that going forward. Last thing here, Kyle, just wanted to mention that Anthony Richardson is likely. And I actually hate even saying these words. Likely done for the year with the shoulder injury. The X-ray, by the way, came back negative, Kyle. And we still he's going to probably require surgery, probably miss the rest of the season. I'm as a football fan, I'm disappointed because Anthony Richardson is incredibly fun to watch. We touched on this a little bit actually on the recap show on Sunday night. You may have listened to it on Monday. We are going to get that sweet volume from this Colts offense most weeks because this Colts defense is bad. Gardner Minshew and the offense is going to be chasing points a lot. Minshew doesn't run, so everything has to come through the air. So I'm thinking Michael Pittman and to a lesser extent Josh Downs are going to be just peppered with targets going forward, and yeah, that's got to be fantastic for their PPR prospects.
Yeah, I just hope you're not playing in a standard league because these guys are rather unlikely to score touchdowns because Gardner Minshew is not good. Like we saw last week, complete implosion. And there's a reason he's a backup who has played, I believe this is his 3rd team in 3 years. Maybe it's his 3rd team in 4 years. I'm not going to care too much about that. There's a reason he's a traveling backup. So he's not particularly good. We saw that last week. But point being, they are comfortable playing fast, playing high volume, and throwing a ton when they have Gardner Minshew under center.
Right.
He's going to throw it short. He's going to pepper guys like Pittman, like Downs with targets, and Pierce, who's dealing with a shoulder injury right now. So I don't know what his status is for this week. He's probably done. And I drafted a lot of that guy, and he's probably done. And the other good news is that we saw, I believe, like 11 combined catches for the running backs last week. So even if they are not, I mean, they're almost certainly not going to be favorites, not going to be running downhill as, it's 21-7. Jonathan Taylor's grinding out carries. The good news is that at least we should get some receiving volume from these guys. We saw Taylor's running volume and receiving volume snaps all tick up last week. His route rate ticked up last week.
Tucked up, I believe.
No, it tucked up last week. He tucked it right up last week.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I think we're trending towards Taylor being, let's call him 2.5 downs. I don't think Zach Moss disappears, but in his second game, he came back and out carried Zach Moss. He saw a bunch of receptions, more routes. So even if he's the 3-down back on this ultimately losing a lot of games team, that could be a lot of receiving volume for him. And he's not a great receiver, but he reminds me sort of like Derrick Henry plus in the receiving game, where if you are getting him targets in open field, he's going to do a lot with those targets, but you need to find a reason to do that with him because he's not lining up in the slot. He's not earning targets on wheel routes. It's just, and as a matter of fact, getting a bunch of receiving snaps, and some of those find the way to him, but he does a lot with those.
And I think even a guy like Kylan Granson, who has recently led the team in tight end routes. I mean, he's only running like 55, 60%, which is not great. But I think even for him, the uptick in overall play volume and overall passing volume could make him viable in deep leagues. It's good for everyone. We're not interested in Minshew, by the way, not at all. But we're interested in everybody else. Look, 13 targets, 11 receptions, like you said, for the running backs for the Colts last week. We like that. We can work with that, Kyle.
Yes, we can.
So don't worry about Minshew so much, except for maybe in Superflex leagues. But get in on these Colts players before the folks realize that, wow, there's a lot of passes. Hey, look at Minshew drop back another 60 times this week. Got to get in before that. All right, Kyle, that's going to do it for us for this Tuesday. We'll be back on Thursday to talk about every single Week 7 game. We will give you all the correct predictions. Until then, that's Kyle Dvorchak. I'm Denny Carter. We'll have Pat Doherty back on Thursday. Goodbye.